So we are ready to go. And I would like to welcome everyone to the White Feather Council of Men podcast. We are extremely excited this evening. One of our visions with this podcast is we wanted to be able to invite guests to come on and share their wisdom, share their experiences. And we are fortunate this evening to have Patricia Jones Turner, Reverend Patricia Jones Turner, who is the executive producer, director of this podcast. It was her visions, her work under the leadership of Pastor Cass Bailey at Trinity Episcopal Church in Charlottesville, Virginia, that is the foundation for this work that Warren and I are doing. And we are very excited to have her be our first guest as far as coming on the podcast to share with us. And we are just super excited about having her with us this evening. And we can't wait for you to meet her and experience her wisdom, her joy. She's this is a word I got from Pastor Cass when he was introducing her at an event not long ago, that she's a sports freak. She loves sports, football, basketball, tennis, you name it. She loves it. She fusses at the television, at the referees, but she's a wonderful person. I personally have known her for many years. And my wife and I, we consider her a dear friend. And I would say this, and then we'll get going, because when she retired, she wanted to move back to Chicago, take care of her dear mother, and eat cookies and drink lemonade. But but there was work to do, and she was picked again by the Holy Spirit to get involved to do some things in Charlottesville, and which led to this podcast, which we feel can have an effect, particularly for men, all over this place we call America. So welcome, Reverend Patricia Jones Turner.
Thank
We're
you so
very
much.
to have you. And I'm going to Warren going to start us off with some questions that we have formulated for you, and we'll take it from there.
Okay.
So Warren, it's on you.
Well, thank you, Phil, but thank you for that introduction of our guest tonight. Patricia, it's great to have you aboard with us tonight. We've enjoyed the first several podcasts that we've done without you, but now we feel it's time to have our first guest on as you. And I thank you for being here. I do have several questions. I'll get right into them. I've been very intrigued by hearing some of what the inception of White Feather Project is or was, how it came to be. If you can give a little bit of a background and maybe some overall purposes and intent of White Feather Project to sort of give us a grand scope of what the intent and purpose is, that would be great. Are you able to do that?
Sure. I'll start by saying thank you, because without you all, there would be no White Feather Council of Men. And I just feel that God, his intentions are so purposeful to have you and Phil doing this work. Because after watching the first segment, I was majorly impressed. You guys sound like the professionals. So I'm going to do my best to keep up. But I'll start by saying, as I was drinking lemonade and eating cookies, the news flash came on about
Mm.
the alt-right, and it showed all this chaos. And I sat up in my chair and I said, this is Charlottesville. And after that, I knew I had to do something. So I thought purposefully to attend a session that occurred maybe a week after the alt-right came, so I could get back in the water of anti-oppression work. But what I learned was a lot of people don't want to study and show themselves approved to do this work. And in 2013, I had the pleasure and pain of attending Groundwater, which is an organization then which was out of Winston-Salem, North Carolina. They came here to Charlottesville and presented 6 months of anti-oppression training. And then, to fast forward, when I went to the training, the group I wanted to be a part of, I noticed that people were not really tapping into the core value of anti-oppression, which is to enhance conversation and engage individuals with truth-telling, wholesome honesty, whether it's painful or not. But this young lady came and she talked about her pain in attending a session that occurred prior to me attending, in which the leader, who was a professional, told her that she lied. You're a liar. And she was saying she had never felt the pains of racism or come in contact with anyone who was racist in her growing up. And the one thing I learned from Groundwater is no one has the right to question your truth. Now, of course, you can ask questions to determine, well, how did that happen? Things like that. But to tell an individual that they're a liar in front of a mass of people. So she came to share her woundedness, which was totally appropriate. And again, no one supported her. And then I sat there saying, somebody's got to say something. So I did. And I told her, I thank you for your truth and honesty. I appreciate that you trusted me enough or us enough to share that. But that was the only support she received. So at that point, I went home and the Holy Spirit kept pushing and pressing. So I said, and the end was, if not you, then who? So I said, oh, wow, because that's a heavy load to carry. So at that point, a grant immediately became available through Charlottesville Area Fund. And in the grant, they specifically called out what things anti-oppression work had to entail, which is honesty, healing, um, truthful conversation and engagement, and healing. It was paraphrased as the Heal Charlottesville grant. So I wrote it with help, not expecting anyone to give a church a second thought. And sure enough, they gave us the grant along with other people who did who took different approaches than we did. So and that brought up another grant which was held or which was to help individuals remember the pain and the causes from the alt-right coming. So a year to the date, we were able to present at Vinegar Hills Lighthouse Theater the film The Mask You Live In, which was a YouTube version of how society views men and the pressures that are put on men to be manly. And Phil and 5 other men participated. And I sat there thinking, we've got to capitalize on this. This can't just be the end. And then when Phil prophetically stated, how did he put it? The people who are involved in the violence and killing in this nation and the world are men. So you've got to include them in the process. So that's the short version.
Okay. Well, that's probably a great segue really into my second question. I will say before I get to the second question, how important it is for us to know about some of the history and some of the inception of White Feather Project overall and what led to it, how funding was made, and the overall principles that you have established in White Feather Project. More directed to this podcast, I do want to know, as my second question, why this podcast specifically was pursued, and what hopes do you, as the executive producer, have for Counsel of Men in particular?
Wow, that's a big pill to swallow. Okay, I'll try to cut it down.
Okay.
Tony Porter, who, when my old life was to be the domestic and sexual violence resource person in Chesterfield County. And during my tenure, Tony Porter became involved in a men's movement called A Call to Men. So everyone was upset who was female because we've been doing this work for 20 years. And they were like, what's a man got to say? They're not going to be honest and tell the truth. So I was like, but we can't teach men how to be men. And then I was placed on the Batterers Intervention Criminal Justice Board. And during that time, we discussed and we talked, and we cannot change the world or relationships and bypass men in the process. So we have to all heal, but there, the services. When I said, listen to where do men go when they have pain? What do men do to heal, to be comforted? And then I heard Phil's 6 men discussion. And I was like, wow, this is too heavy to overlook. So we can't just bypass men in the process. And that night, going back to the mask you live in, we had 100 people come. And then Phil came and did a discussion on the fear of African American men. Same thing happened. So I said, okay, men are coming to the well. So we need to pay attention and take hold of this and give space for them to share their pain. Eventually, that is what I would like to have happen, that they will trust you enough to share their innermost thoughts and pain with you all. And what I've learned in coming to know Warren and knowing Phil is there could be no two better people to do this. So God has the right idea. If I can just loosely say, approve of God's design. But I mean, I am so impressed with you two and trusting and the value that you all place on healing. And that's my goal,
Okay.
is to have healing occur. And during the tenure or your time on the podcast, have African American men and white men understand that struggle occurs with everybody.
Yeah.
No one's immune to suffering. And to hear the pain that the African American men prayerfully will share, and to offer some solace to them, and for the African American males to be receptive of that solace being offered authentically.
Well, I so appreciate you sharing what your hopes for this is, and I appreciate your personal words, but also appreciate the vision that you brought to White Feather Project and to this effort. We will certainly do our best to honor that. I do think I loved hearing the dual challenge that you've presented of anti-oppression on the one hand, but specifically men struggling with men on the other hand. And just to remind our listeners, we've had two previous podcasts where actually I interview Phil about men issues, what it is to be a man. So we've already explored some of that in the beginning, and of course we'll come back to that. But you have set up a great you've set it up well with balancing that approach of anti-oppression, dealing with healing, dealing with hurt and pain, but yet being focused on men talking to men and processing that together. So thank you for that. I'm going to turn a little bit of time over to Phil for some follow-up questions. Thanks, Patricia.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Patricia. It's kind of deja vu. When Warren and I was trying to get as much information that we wanted to have about you and looking at your background, and I went back and looked at the MLK Service Award that you got at the church there, Union African Baptist Church, and listen to the whole program again, and I remember Pastor Cass mentioning when he was introducing you that one of your mantra was violence anywhere affects people everywhere. That how true that is. And you know, when we think about violence in America, you can't help but to think about whenever we hear a breaking news event that comes across the television screen about some mass killing or something relating to violence. Subconsciously, most of us think Okay, we know it's a man. And then my as an African American man, then my thoughts are, I hope it's just not a black man. It's just subconsciously, and but you just automatically think 9 out of 10 times, 9.5 times, you're gonna be correct that it is a man that's out here doing something stupid. We just had the 85-year-old man, was it in Missouri, in Kansas City, somewhere in Missouri out that way, that shot the 10-year-old boy that went to the wrong door to get his little brothers. And it's just like, would we ever be able to just get away from the daily violence that we have, Patricia? Um, you I wanted to, this was a question, one of the questions that came up when we was talking about, when I was trying to formulate some questions to give to you today is, and the question I had to do more with your view of boys and men. As we look at the landscape of America, the age seems to be dropping, getting younger and younger that are committing acts of violence. I wanted to get your views on that. We got the little 6-year-old in Newport News. I don't know if we can get any younger than that.
Yeah.
That shot his teacher, and it was deja vu for me. But I wanted to get your views on that particular subject. And when we talk about boys and men, and it just seemed to be just a cascade of the age is dropping. The reports about men and violence. How do you feel about that whole concept?
Well, I don't know if you were around when, because I used to write curriculum for VCU for domestic violence, anti-violence. And one book I ran into is called Men and Separation Anxiety. And and I'll get you the name of the author because it's kind of like my Bible. And I should know his name, but I can't pull it up. I'm older, so I can't pull it up right now. But what he said that struck me was men are not allowed to grieve.
Yeah.
When they are babies and the mother is breastfeeding, the father comes up and says, won't you let the boy be a boy? Get him off that breast. He should be eating something else by now. And he has not been weaned from the mother in a way that leads to comforting, according to the author. And the other thing is when you play cowboys and Indians, or you're outside playing ball and the boy gets hurt, he runs in, puts his head in his mother's lap, and the father happens to see it. Boy, get up from there and be a man. And I thought back to my father, who is, one of the football coaches here. It was one of the football coaches at the high school before desegregation came. And I remember how I'd be pitching in softball, and the ball would come right at me, and I'd hold my glove up, and it would hit me in my face. And I would hear him from the stand, girl, shake it off, shake it off. That don't hurt. And I was like, the devil is a lie. That hurt like heck. I mean, to have a ball hit you full, you hit the glove, kind of breaking the speed, but then whoosh, it's in your face. Yeah, that hurt. But because he said, suck it up and shake it off, I did. And then you think about, and I'm a woman,
Yeah.
a female. So you think about how we do that. I have seen him with players who tease me now about how dad did them, was instead of tackling dummies, he used people. So that stuck because, again, shake it up, boy. You're going to get hit harder than that on Friday. So, the pattern of how we raise men and how women, we don't know how. There was probably no comeback the woman could have made to him that would have been able to make sense if that rings clear, because men are not raised to be comforted, to be hugged and cuddled. And what the book said was that lack of being loved, hugged, cuddled, cherished, we're going to pay. And we're paying.
Mhm.
I thank you for that. I was my wife and I was out walking today, and she was listening to this Urban View channel that she loves, and the guest there had a young lady on who described herself as a culture ambassador.
Mm.
I thought about that. It's like a culture ambassador. I said, I wondered I could use that. A culture ambassador. Because basically what we are addressing here is really that's what it is. It's trying to change the culture of boys and men.
Yeah. Yeah.
At least bring it to the forefront that we can give men a platform to begin to look at this whole uh, status of boys and men in a different way.
Mm.
Um, and as you think about the future, if this is a question I'd like to ask you, if you were queen for a day, what would be the few laws you would change in America if you were queen for a day?
Wow. First of all, I would change the approach that we have with people. We come with baggage, all of us. And if we say we don't, we lying. We also have biases and misconceptions. And when I was with Chesterfield, one of the things, and I was new to corrections because my office was victim services, but we followed the Duluth model, which was to put victim services in a space where the perpetrators will have to be responsive to what the victims are saying. This particular time, a police officer was shot. And what affected me and impacted me so much was it wasn't a black and white thing. This police officer went into a space, called to a domestic, did not unholster his gun, but because the individual, and you probably heard about it, Phil, because the individual was a probation officer, he felt secure. Oh, this is one of us. Let me go back and tell him, come on, man, get together. Stop acting this way. And he walked down the hall to the room, and the man shot him in the head.
Mm.
And
Yeah,
I said, the assumption was that he would be accepted mano y mano,
yeah,
and it wouldn't be a problem. but it was. And it cost him his life.
Yeah.
And that was the saddest thing I've ever had to experience in trying to understand the approach and how when someone is being friendly and coming in and had your best interest at heart, you couldn't hear that. You know, the guy couldn't hear that sensitivity. And for that, the other guy paid dearly.
No, thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
Go ahead, Juan.
Yeah, I was just going to say before we get away from this conversation, I had a little follow up. There's just been some amazing words shared tonight. Um, Patricia, I can't get over the fact how many, I wish I had counted the times that you have said truth or truth telling in this interview. And I think that's a lot of what we're after in this podcast and in our work together. But you've also brought up how difficult that's going to be because we bring our own biases, our own prejudices in. You just mentioned those words, and we have to be honest and open with each other about that. I do, I do want to ask, as maybe as we are wrapping up, um, maybe particularly to our participants, what advice would you give those who participate with us as they approach these and as we listen and learn and grow together? What advice would you give us? What advice would you give our audience?
Wow. I saw that question and I said, wow, that's deeper than I can even go as a female, because
Okay.
the suffering that men have, the pain that men have experienced that they have not shared, breaks my heart,
Mm,
because I see the response some get when they are real. Like if you watch Kevin Hart, everybody got jokes about Kevin Hart's height and about how small he is, and Patrick Ewing saying he can fit in the palm of my hand. You know, that's got to sting a little, because I'm sure he didn't just start getting teased about that
yeah.
when he became famous. So even being famous didn't protect him from being, I call it being bullied.
Mm,
And how he manages to pull himself up and not let it bother him, because he knows I am short. I am not built like a big male. So the macho piece, if you've ever watched his movies, they use that for comedic relief. Even
yeah.
when he was a police officer, you know. And so I just think about the things men get taunted with, or, I've heard my brother-in-law say in with men, because they're the only group I can watch closely. And one thing they'll say to each other is, "Oh, you got jokes," but
Mm,
it doesn't go any deeper. Now, it does in a way, because before they leave each other, I heard they always pray for safety, pray for, driving home because it's late. Um, and I don't know or haven't seen any other group of men be concerned in that manner. And
okay.
they're all members of the same church. So, you know, but for people to let go and let God, and even if they haven't come to the point of believing, to know that it's not by accident that they tuned in to your show. And maybe I'm hoping that you will touch that spot in which they have carried that bag that they've been carrying, which will offer to them some relief to start unpacking.
That's a great advice. Start unpacking it. And I think if that's where we can start, that's a great place. So I wanna thank you. We're about out of time. Did we need to do anything else, Phil, on this conversation? I have some closing words, but did
Uh,
you need to come back circle?
No, I think we right on schedule, and thank you, Patricia, for allowing
Yeah.
us brains and share your wisdom about this podcast, and we'll let Warren close us out.
Okay.
Yeah, Patricia, I just want to say again, we're so appreciative of not just the passion you bring, but the practicality of putting that passion into action, and how you are doing what you're doing in your own little world of Charlottesville, but it's going to have greater impacts beyond that. And thank you for having us. Thank you for allowing us to talk to you tonight. And to our listeners out there, I just want to say thank you for tuning in. I hope you get a little clearer picture of some of our purposes, some of our intent, some of what birthed this movement and this effort, and where we hope it can go. And with Reverend Patricia's words tonight, I think she did a great job with informing us of where we can go with this and what the challenges are in front of us. I will remind our listeners that really, when this airs, our next air time, I believe, will be in 2 weeks, at that time will be about May the 10th. So I just want to remind us of that schedule. So thank you very much, Patricia. Thanks, co-host Phil, and thanks to all of our listeners. And we'll see you next time here on White Feather Project Council of Men. Have a
Thank
good
you.
evening.
You
Stephen,
too.
yeah,
Bye.
bye bye.